Yeah, and I want to ask him about like how he would avoid creating an economic caste system between the owners
Well, I mean,
and
I would
the.
argue you always say that, but I mean, we're already living in that system, so I don't see why giving $1,000 to people is going to make that worse.
No, but I mean, if he's arguing that we're creating a human-centered economy, then just giving people $1,000 a month does not fulfill that.
Oh yeah, well, I just mean like in addition to everything, like it would be a pretty like substantial improvement to give everyone a thousand. And if we just kept everything as it is, if we start stripping away the social safety net, then yeah, I totally agree.
No, 100%. I just think that gets away from the true momentum that the left needs to pursue to fundamentally alter the way that the economy functions in this country. Otherwise, we will, 100 years from now, get back in the situations that we are now, where we're accustomed to this, sort of basic rent income or stipend, but we have, 70% of the country living on that, and then 30% of the country living in absolute luxury.
I mean, I don't think that just because people would have enough money to pay their bills and for food would mean they would stop working and stop pursuing like, a means of a good life.
No, but do you think that would, like, what happens when Uber, Postmates, it's all automated and we haven't changed the way that ownership is structured, and people are unable to find jobs because it's been automated, and the ownership class owns all of the production, which is now automated and no longer offers people employment. So there's about 30% so the economy has shrunk to about the 30% of the size it is now. While population grows, 70% of the population isn't going to have a choice. They're going to be forced to live off of their basic rent income. And I think that if we spend all of our time pushing for basic income, then we're missing an opportunity to push for something more. And I think that we could run into the pitfalls of like the Green New Deal, where we didn't push for enough.
I understand that to an extent. I just don't think I feel like UBI in that sense is a little bit more like realistic in a way, because it's like it accepts the fact that we're basically not going to enter a post-capitalist society, and it says like, since we are ostensibly stuck in a capitalist corporate society, at least $1,000 a month is like enough for people to live dignified lives. But I get what you're saying. I would likewise focus the energy on literally tearing down our capitalist system as it is and replacing it with a social democracy. I'm totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, obviously there's, harm reduction under capitalism and things that you can do to make people's life easier. But I just think that kind of how you were, voicing your concerns when we were talking to Awkward about like lulling the American left and the activist energy, or the activists to sleep basically with the election of Joe Biden, sort of like we saw for the 8 years that Obama was president. And I worry that we would see the same thing if we allow them to kind of like, how the big criticism of FDR and the Green New Deal is that, it didn't bring socialism, it just saved capitalism. Yeah. And then that's like a compliment from people on the right and a diss from people on the left, right?
I mean, that was the whole criticism of Bernie Sanders. It was like, why are you trying to save a system that's unsavable, unsalvageable?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is what it comes down to, right? So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, if we're ever going to reach, I think we just have to push past something like universal basic income in exchange for something like worker democracy. Yeah. Truly radical policies, and that's what. So
I just don't think UBI has to be like, and it's not like UBI or nothing. Like, I mean, I think UBI is one of these things. It's like Medicare for All or Green New Deal. Like, it's one of these things we need to be pursuing. I don't think it's like it's like exclusive to those other things.
No, but I just have a feeling that it's going to be used as like a carrot to a negotiation tactic that's going to be used to pacify the true demands that would create a more just economic system.
That's true. I just think it would like liberate so many people from economic anxiety, and also allow them to actually pursue the jobs they want. It would allow like parents to actually be parents and not have to be slaves to their fucking jobs just so they can pay
what are you talking about? Not be slaves to their jobs? They'd be slaves to the income. Like, I think that unless you tackle the because you have to imagine that, like, take Uber for example, right?
The income.
So you're saying that they would be freed up from to do whatever they want. Like $1,000 a month is not enough.
Freed up to meet the basic bare necessities: food, bills, light, energy, lights. It would let people not just spend the entirety of their income on those things. I mean, who wants to just spend their entire paycheck on bills?
No, 100%. But I think that the way what's the conclusion of that when, okay, so we say we've passed, universal basic income, and it's $1,500 a month, and everybody talks about how this is like a landmark thing. So you and I are both, along with everybody in the rest of the country, we're getting $1,500 a month. Now, for you and me, that's really great because we're single guys, right? Like we're just we're responsible for ourselves. But for a family, that $1,500 is going to go pretty quickly. So it's not going to really change. Like you said, people are still going to work. They're going to be forced to work.
I think you're really undervaluing the amount of money that $1,500 is, especially for a struggling family.
Okay, I'm not saying that it wouldn't help them and it wouldn't alleviate their suffering, but it's not going to long-term change their prospects. It's going to it's not going to bring them out of the working class. It's not going to, bring them the opportunities that somebody who is, currently in the opulent class.
What legislatively would get us to that point? Like, I mean,
workplace democracy.
I guess. I feel like that's no easier to sell or pass, or that would
maybe it's no easier, but people have been extremely fond of UBI. It's caught on like wildfire, and I think that if it's caught on like wildfire, so could workplace democracy. And if you
Well, again, why do they have to, I mean, why are those things mutually exclusive? Why can't we?
No, my fear is that that UBI, I don't have anything against UBI as a concept. If you want to give people like that, I don't care. I think rent should be a right. So whatever, I like universal basic rent, universal basic income, whatever. That small amount of money is probably going to go to your rent. Like Zizek makes that point in his, I don't know, like a lecture that I listened to that he gave. But anyway, I just think that it's going to be used as a pacifier by the neoliberal order because it doesn't require any fundamental restructuring of the capitalist system. You can still keep an opulent 1%, and then the droves of the people that you continue to lay off and relegate to a life where they spend only able to exist off of their, paltry income as you automate the Uber gig economy away. Because that's the other thing that I'm worried about. And we can talk about this a little bit more later on another podcast, but I just wrote that piece about how Uber acquired Postmates while they're in the middle of fighting multiple lawsuits about the classification of their workers. Proposition 25 or 22, Prop 22 in California. Shit, I'm sorry, I can't speak right now. But Prop 22 in California basically would create a third classification for workers just so that they could be exploited by rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft. And I think that when you like crush that legislation and you say the Supreme Court mandates that, they lose in court and Uber has to reclassify their drivers as workers if they want to continue doing it. I think that only motivates them to, automate away jobs. And that's not to say that I don't support their workers being treated with, the rights that come with employment. I 100% support the reclassification of drivers as criminal, that Uber is able to, deem them contracted workers when they're very clearly meet the legal rights of employees. But I'm worried that without addressing these larger issues like automation, which is constantly touted by somebody like Andrew Yang as what is going to be the main driver in the need for something like UBI, I'm just worried that once they automate away those jobs, where are the new jobs going to be created? The owner class isn't going to go back to needing human labor once they've had a taste of all the profits that can be, hoarded.
Well, I think the one thing that you are kind of missing out on is that a universal income, basic income, allows a lot more people to just work for themselves and actually be entrepreneurs. Do stuff like what we're doing. It would enable us to do this full time essentially. And at that point, you don't have to be working for anyone. That's kind of the American dream itself. And I feel like UBI just offers people that launch pad to do those kind of things. And I totally agree that it cannot be offered, instead of anything. It's not like, well, we get UBI, but we don't get healthcare. Like we're going to strip the social safety net and,
well, I think it's more than the social.
Well, not just that, but I literally like food stamps. I mean, because it like a right-wing conservative libertarian UBI is a replacement for the social safety net. It's literally just like, here's a Band-Aid instead of all these programs that people actually need and want and like.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying, but my pushback would be, say I am a person that maybe my dream is to be a carpenter, but I just can't afford it because I can't quite make ends meet. That $1,500 a month would help me really I make $1,000 a month from being a carpenter, not quite enough to live, but now $2,500 a month is enough for living in this make-believe example. So I'm making these things, or I'm an inventor and I invent something and I start selling it on Amazon, right? Amazon is going to take my idea, start mass producing it cheaper, undercut me, and then put me out of work.
Okay, well, I agree with what you're saying, but like we're not just starting from the ground up here. We're working within a system that's already horribly fucked. So like I agree that we should just burn everything down and start from a totally post-capitalist system. But from what we're working with, I think UBI is probably the most profound, like big step we can take to getting to a point where people actually realize, one, that the government like can work for them, can provide a more of a welfare state, kind of an experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, other countries do it. I think it really starts changing the way people think about government, and which is another huge thing that I appreciated Yang's campaign for, which is it like woke up a lot of people to the fact that like there's no reason why our government shouldn't be just paying us literal income, just like Social Security. In the same way, Bernie's campaign opened a lot of people's eyes to the way that there's no reason why we shouldn't have universal health care. But I totally agree. They need to be working in tandem. And I agree we should be pushing towards a non-capitalist society. Because you're right. Yeah, I mean, you can invent something and then Amazon is you're still going to have to sell it on Amazon if you want to fucking get anywhere with it.
Yeah. So I think for the most part we're in agreement. I'm skeptical about its implications. I do think that you're correct to bring up the point that it will shift the public opinion on the government and the people. Especially one of the things that the right in the past 4 decades has really exploited and is people's mistrust of the government ever since Reagan. There's no scarier words than "I'm the government and I'm here to help." And I think that's kind of been beaten into people's logic, and it's reasonable because for most people when they interact with the government, the government is fucking them. But the fact that you have to constantly remind people is that we are the government. We are capable of change, and we can make the government work for us if we institute these dramatic changes.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's no different than expanding Medicare to everyone. It's just expanding Social Security to everyone. It really is feasibly no different. And Social Security is, again, one of the most beloved programs. And I don't think your most hardcore libertarian senior in the country would give up their Social Security. So, I mean, I just feel like it just works, as simple as that. As far, sure, there's implications, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's just about the quickest, easiest way to just literally help people and
alleviate the suffering of the working.
And also I like the fact about UBI that it's not here's this amount of money a week for food, but you can only spend it at this grocery store on this kind of food, and you can't buy any alcohol.
It's not patronizing.
Yeah, it's here's $1,000. We trust you to do what's best for yourself or your family. I just feel like it's a more sensible, good way for government to operate. But I definitely agree that it can't be used in substitution for anything foundational.